think about what this Turkish section meant for Mozart. What was he trying to express? And how was Turkish culture viewed at large by the Viennese people where Mozart was living? Vienna had a complicated relationship with the Ottoman Empire and Turkey. Turkey tried laying siege to Vienna, I believe twice at least, certainly about 100 years before Mozart wrote this violin concerto. And they were held off by the Viennese, but it was a very tense military altercation. And so during Mozart's time, Viennese viewed the Turkish people as being a threat in some ways, but also the Viennese were fascinated by, well, to put it plainly, the exoticism of Turkish culture. They were interested in Turkish food, they were interested in Turkish dress, and they were interested in Turkish music. This is not the only piece that Mozart wrote that was influenced by Turkish culture. Take Abduction from the Seraglio, or take Rondo alla Turca. We all know that theme. So there's kind of this, wariness and fear that the Viennese had of Turkey, Ottoman Empire, but also there was a fascination and a love for their culture, but also, if we're honest about it, a little bit kind of almost fetishizing it. Also, this section is in addition to that complicated relationship that Mozart and Viennese in general had with Turkish culture, this section is further complicated by the fact that, as is often the case in cultural appropriation, Mozart does not quite accurately capture the true essence of Turkish musical heritage, because he has two elements in this section. He's got the march element, which, as we discussed, is kind of a transformation of, and this very militaristic yum bum 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 is what you call a janissary rhythm. Janissary being a faction of the Turkish military, and they used to march to a beat that had the following pattern: long, long, short, short, long, 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 short, short, long. And we see that right at measure 65. The orchestra has so here he captures a true element of Turkish musical heritage. However, in the solo violin section, when he writes, here he conflates Turkish music with Romani virtuoso violin playing. So, kind of a misconception that the Romanis and the Turks were, one and the same. They certainly weren't, although they both came from east of Vienna. And Mozart sort of lumps them together, but I think actually this section is better served if we create a distinction between the two and recognize that the march, yup-up-up-up-up-up-bum, is very militaristic and poised, while this kind of virtuoso Romani fiddling music, this section is better served if we highlight the difference between these two elements: the taut rigidity of the militaristic march, and then sort of the more freewheeling, virtuoso, improvisatory nature of the solo violin element. So, whatever we do, we don't want to play this section with the same elegant poise that we play the outer minuet sections, because for better or for worse, maybe for worse, the purpose of Mozart inserting this was to create sort of an exotic musical otherness. And while we may not agree with the musical intent behind it, I think the dramatic elements are best served by highlighting Mozart's perception of these differences. Okay, so if we said that the minuet is quite courtly and dance-like, we can imagine all the Viennese nobility bowing and curtsying to each other. This should be played downright furioso. Can we hear the opening?